Sometimes movies get a bad reputation. Even if you haven't seen them, you know that there's some that just blow. The Wicker Man remake is embarrassing, The Godfather Part 3 sucks, and Batman and Robin ruined cinema, to name but a few. However, for as fun as it is to dunk on bad movies, not all of them deserve the reputations they've garnered. So with that in mind, I'm Josh from Whatculture.com, and these are 10 terrible films that are actually awesome. Number 10, White House Down. Okay, here's the pitch. It's Die Hard, but in the White House, with Channing Tatum taking out the villains that are threatening his daughter. Now, here's the problem with this movie. White House Down opened 3 months after Olympus Has Fallen, which pretty much told the same story, only with more cliches and worse CGI. Lack of originality aside though, White House Down has all the big bucks action sequences that you'd expect from this sort of thing. And it's sheer joy as no-think escapism leaves Olympus Has Fallen choking on its dust. Put simply, if you want to see a car smash through the wall of the Oval Office and President Jamie Foxx take on his enemies with a rocket launcher, well, you need to see this movie. Further fun is provided by a car chase on the White House lawn with helicopter gunships and machine guns and whatnot, and if you still need convincing about the film's merits, just try sitting through a double bill of Olympus Has Fallen and London Has Fallen back to back. Yeah, I know there's more than those two movies, but even I wouldn't want to put you through 3 of them. Number 9, Spider-Man 3. Okay, here we go. Spider-Man 3 owns. And I'm not just saying that because there's currently a Sam Raimi-verse love-in since No Way Home came out. No, Spider-Man 3 has owned since 2007. Now let's get some things out of the way. Is it as good as the first 2 installments that preceded it? No. Does it have its problems? Absolutely. Is it a bad movie though? Hell no it isn't. Yes, the film is overstuffed, the Uncle Ben retcon sucks, and Venom is done dirty, but there's so much to love surrounding those pitfalls. Raimi's movies always put the focus first and foremost on the interpersonal drama of the characters, and that shines through in this sequel still. The breakup of Peter and Mary Jane's relationship is handled really well, as is Peter's spiral caused by his own arrogance. Also, it's just really funny. Peter's black suit antics are funny. The dancing in the street is funny. Bruce Campbell's over-eager waiter is really funny. On the other hand, the action is well handled, with Raimi's passion still being there for that. The final fight in particular is gnarly as hell and directed with such gusto. With all of this in mind, for this to be lumped in with the worst superhero films of all time is an absolute crime. Number 8, Legion. Legion casts Paul Bettany as a machine gun-wielding archangel who arrives at a truck stop in the Mojave Desert to protect waitress Charlie, who's about to give birth to the future savior of mankind. The forces of evil are also present and manifest themselves as potty-mouthed old ladies who can spider walk across ceilings, or zombies that can only be stopped by heavy artillery. It sounds awesome, right? Like a real slam-bang supernatural thriller that just wants to give you a good time. Well, it absolutely is, though not quite as good as Constantine, which released in the same era. That's another movie that gets labeled as terrible, by the way, that's also kinda good, so you can have that one as an extra. Legion, though, is dumb fun, and not to be one of those Noel Gallagher types who screams that they don't make them how they used to, but it's even better in hindsight knowing that a movie like this probably would never get a budget like this now. Plus, it's simply difficult to dislike a movie where Paul Bettany leads Tyrese Gibson and Dennis Quaid in a heavily armed assault against zombies dressed as ice cream vendors. Number 7, See No Evil. All a slasher movie really asks is that you get on its wavelength to enjoy it for what it is. Although, given alcohol's mysterious ability to lower expectations, being good and loaded for these probably doesn't hurt either. Backed by WWE as a vehicle for teacher-turned-grappler Kane, real name Glenn Jacobs, See No Evil casts the 6'10" behemoth as Jacob Goodnight, one of those unstoppable killing machines with mommy issues. He just so happens to be holed up in the Blackwell Hotel, when a bunch of people are sent there on a cleaning assignment. But if you think this is a regular hotel without secret passageways and one-way glass, well, you're sadly mistaken. Is it going to completely blow your mind? Absolutely not. Is it going to fill the void in your life when it gets to 2 AM and you're looking for something to do? Well, it might do just that. Number 6, Transporter 3. When Transporter 3 arrived in cinemas, the response was expectedly harsh. In fact, The Hollywood Reporter called it a nonsensical, choppily edited bore. But if you need reassuring as to just how awesome this movie is, just watch The Transporter Refueled instead. Put simply, when you combine Corey Yung's fight choreography with Jason Statham's general badass charisma, you're really onto something special. And this sequel has a shot at being the most demented entry in the franchise to boot. Wearing a bracelet that will explode if he gets more than 75 feet away from his car, Statham's character has to travel across Europe to deliver a package, and in the process gets involved in the usual martial arts standoffs and car chases. The standout is the climactic sequence shot in real time without models and CGI, where Statham drives his car onto a moving train in order to catch villain Robert Nepper. Both actors seem to be having a whale of a time, relishing playing off each other, and you'll have fun watching them to boot. Number 5, Barbed Wire. If there's one type of film that Hollywood does well, it's the straight-to-video action movie writ large. Take a Z-grade script, give it a studio budget, and hey, presto, you've got yourself a cult classic in the making. With Pamela Anderson in the lead, Barbed Wire unfathomably rips off the plot of Casablanca, with Pam in the Humphrey Bogart role as the nightclub owner who attempts to help an old flame escape the country. I mean, I could probably just stop right there, right? That's surely enough of a pulp. Well, if it's not, though it was panned on release, the flick did have some supporters. Hell, Roger Ebert even conceded that the movie, quote, has a high energy level and a sense of deranged fun. And deranged fun is exactly what it is. Taking its visual cues from previous comic book adaptations like The Crow, Barbed Wire knows its B-grade material and never attempts to take itself too seriously. It promises trash, and oh boy, does it deliver trash, and hey, what's not to like about that? Number 4, Resident Evil Afterlife. Returning to the director's chair for the first time since the original, Paul W.S. Anderson opens Resident Evil Afterlife with one of the most outrageous action scenes in the series, with hundreds of clones of hero Alice attacking Umbrella HQ before bad guy Albert Wesker detonates a bomb that destroys everything in sight. It might be the peak of the whole thing, but the rest of the film isn't bad either. In fact, there's more madness in store along the way, including mind control devices, a reanimated Wesker with glowing red eyes who's been eating test subjects, and an encounter with a giant axe-wielding monster. With Anderson at the helm, the action has more snap to it than its predecessors, and he lets nothing get in the way of giving the audience a good time. And that's ultimately what all of these movies are, a good time. Even as a hardcore fan of the games myself, I have to appreciate just how much Anderson commits to doing his own thing, even if his own thing was pretty insane. Number 3, Speed Racer. For better or worse, the Wachowskis have always made movies for themselves. Though they received huge mainstream success with The Matrix, the sisters have since used that as a jumping-off point to create huge blockbusters with distinct identities. And that exact element has allowed Speed Racer, one of their most criticized projects, to shine so many years later. See, the Wachowskis have always worn their anime influence on their sleeves, and that made them the perfect candidates for this adaptation. The phrase, "it's like a comic book movie come to life," always gets thrown around willy-nilly these days, but here that assessment is true. Speed Racer has such a sense of style, brightness, and levity that sadly marked it out as being too goofy in an era where The Dark Knight was just about to change blockbusters forever. Speed Racer, though, is more accessible than ever in the 2020s, and it absolutely is worth a look. Number 2, The Texas Chainsaw Massacre 4: The Next Generation. So many of the Texas Chainsaw Massacre movies have been trashed over the years, but the one that's universally hated is the Renee Zellweger and Matthew McConaughey starring fourth movie. This thing has been criticized to death, to the point where I went into it with dangerously low expectations. Which is why it was such a surprise to realize that this movie is actually kinda awesome. In a way, it's a knowing retread of the original, pitching in universe that the Texas Chainsaw story, you know, a family terrorizing a young woman in their house, is some kind of cyclical ritual that plays out constantly. It's a weird meta angle that eventually goes off the rails towards the end, implying that shady supernatural businessmen have been controlling the family the whole time. But before we get there, we do get to enjoy one of Matthew McConaughey's best performances, and I'm deadly serious when I say that. He is absolutely committed to making this character as nasty and brutish as he can. He totally goes for it, and it works, creating a genuinely threatening aura and making for the franchise's best villain outside of Leatherface. It obviously has issues, it is panned for a reason, but there is a surprising amount to like in here, especially considering just how safe the other installments in this series played it. Number 1, Fast and Furious Tokyo Drift. The Fast and Furious franchise is now one of the biggest in cinema history, but for a while it looked like it was dead in the water before it really even had a chance to shine. After 2 middling installments, the series continued with Tokyo Drift, a spin-off that lacked any of the original stars. One of the lowest rated flicks in the whole franchise, this effort is often written off as the one movie that doesn't belong. The thing is though, Tokyo Drift, in one sense, is actually the movie that saved the franchise, not nearly ended it. And that's because it was directed by none other than Justin Lin. Lin, as you may know, is instrumental to the success of the franchise in the long term. Being the man who fully clicked with the material and directed 3, 4, 5, and 6, he brought this franchise back from the brink, and his talents are entirely on show in this maligned third flick. Seriously, if you're a fan of these movies, Tokyo Drift shouldn't be ignored. Not only do we get so much of hand, but if you like 4, 5, and 6, well, this is almost on the exact same wavelength.